Welcome to the Food Junkies Podcast. Here, we aim to bring you the experience, strength, and hope of professionals working on the front lines in the field of food addiction. Our mission is to educate you, the listener, and increase overall awareness about food addiction as a recognized disorder. Here, we discuss all things recovery, exploring the many pathways people take towards abstinence in order to achieve a health-forward lifestyle. We hope to inspire you to thrive rather than just survive. So stay positive, make a change for yourself, and share your journey with others. And hopefully the message will spread.
Is it enough to follow a keto diet to maintain food serenity? Welcome to the Food Junkies Podcast. My name is Dr. Vera Tarman, and I am your host today, speaking with Monica Boyer. Monica is a certified ketogenic lifestyle coach and a passionate advocate for holistic health and wellness. Her journey began with a life-changing experience 7 years ago that inspired her to leave her career as an admin secretary and pursue certification in nutrition, ketogenic coaching, and food addiction recovery. With a profound weight loss of over 120 pounds through the ketogenic lifestyle, Monica has maintained her transformation for nearly 7 years and is passionate to help others achieve the same. To that end, Monica got her keto certification with Ketogenic Living 101 with Kate Jaramillo and life coaching with the Transformational Academy in 2018. But the focus on low-carb eating was not enough. Food addiction was a missing piece in her practice. So she completed her holistic medicine and addiction and sugar certification with Bitten Johnson in early 2024. Monica has also received her intermittent fasting certification with Brian Byrne and is in the process of getting her certification with Dr. Mindy Peltz, author of Fasting Like a Girl, where she will work with women and nutrition building based on their hormone. This year, she acquired Ketogenic Living 101 and now runs one of the most successful keto coaching certification programs in the U.S. In addition to her coaching practice, Monica has launched a podcast called Beyond the Scale, Weight Loss and Wellness. She's also active in various media platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Welcome, Monica.
Oh, thank you so much. It's good to be here today.
Thank you. We always start with a bit of a personal story. Why don't you tell us about your transformational story from secretary to keto and food addiction coach?
Yeah, my journey is a funny journey. It started one place and it ended another. My journey started when I was sitting across the table from my adult son. He had just gotten engaged and he wanted to go to Cedar Point, which is an amusement park here in the state. And I froze and I lied to him and said, oh gosh, we can't afford it. But the real reason why I couldn't go was because I couldn't fit on the roller coasters. And so that was my moment of, I have got to change my life. I was 250 pounds at the time and my blood pressure was stroke level. I had type 2 diabetes. I had it all. My doctor said, Monica, if you don't change, you're going to end up in the hospital with a stroke. And that didn't move me, but the thing that moved me that day was my son. And it was the fact that I couldn't be the mom to him that I wanted to be. And so that was where my journey changed. And that's when I discovered the ketogenic lifestyle. And I had tried every diet in the book. I did everything from starvation diets to even laxatives. I did everything for about 20 years, about 25 years, and nothing worked. And I called my friend Renee and I said, I know you've lost weight and you got to tell me what to eat. And that's all I cared about. I didn't care about the pancreas. I didn't care about anything. I'm just like, I just have to change. And that started my journey. And that was in 2017. And from that journey, I lost 120 pounds. I found a lifestyle. I have kept the weight off, but I did not know, Vera, I did not know I had a food addiction until I picked up your book. And I think I told you when I first met you that your book changed my life. And I specifically, if I can tell the story, it was the nursing home story. You gave me a voice in that. And I thought to myself, I didn't know we were allowed to say that out loud. If you've read Vera's book, you probably know what I'm talking about. I didn't know we were allowed to say those shameful things out loud. And I realized that I had more than a weight problem. I had a food addiction. And so my journey morphed from weight loss to food addiction. And it gave me the words that I needed to heal. And so that's where I started as an administrative secretary. And people watched my journey, and I was spending so much time away from my family helping people lose weight that I just thought, I wonder if there's something here that the world needs. I wonder if there's a voice that's missing for women who have lost their identity, who have lost all hope like I had. And so that's when I became certified, and immediately my practice picked up. It just launched into something that I only can say was in the hand of God. And that began my journey and my career change. And since then, I have worked with thousands of women, bringing them hope. And even my personal journey, as that morphed into something that I wasn't expecting, my practice journey also morphed into something that I was not expecting, moving from weight loss to food addiction. So it's just been this kind of this living being of change and learning more and more. So that's a little bit of my story.
It's interesting. You had a keto practice because that was working for you, and you discovered the food addiction dynamic that was so powerful for you. How did you manage to get that concept of food addiction palatable for people? Because that is the big struggle. People come to us and say, yeah, you're right, this is a problem. We can't translate that into action that people are happy to proceed. Yes, we can amongst the highly motivated, but in the general public, I'm not doing that. So what was your secret sauce?
It was words, and I'll explain. I was listening to Ben Azadi. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but I was listening to his podcast one day. I was just out walking, and this woman with this beautiful accent was interviewing with him. And I remember as I was walking, Bitten Johnson, she started to put words into my missing pieces of my practice. So as I morphed from a ketogenic coach, my concern was long-term, because there's so many yo diets out there and so many failures. I don't want to see that in my practice. I'm not impressed with 100-pound loss if we can't keep it off. And so as I was working and I was sitting with these women, listening to their stories, I began to notice that they were falling off the wagon. And why couldn't I pass to them what had happened to me? What was I missing in my practice? I knew all of the science. I knew about insulin resistance. I knew about all of these things that I was trying to instill in them. And yet they kept falling off the wagon. And I started to get a little bit of imposter syndrome and wonder, what am I doing wrong as a coach? And when I heard Bitten on Ben Azadi's podcast talk about language like addiction, I'm like, that is it. And the minute that podcast was over, I was on her website and I'm like, I need this in my practice, because this is what's going to bring freedom for women and men. I mostly coach women in menopause, perimenopause. That's my niche, and that's who I speak to. But I'm like, if I can give these women words that they didn't know, that they could not touch physically, then that's where their freedom comes. And that was through food addiction. And the funny thing is, when I started my journey, it was about weight loss. I was just desperate to get the weight loss off. By the way, I did go on the roller coaster with my son a year later. We had a celebration at Cedar Point, but what I forgot to tell him was that I was terrified of roller coasters. But there was hell or high water was not keeping me off of that. And it was a beautiful day. But I realized if my practice started with weight loss, and that was my key to success in the marketing world. We talk about social media. That was my key. We have lost thousands of pounds. At the end of the day, I didn't care about that. I cared about their long-term success. And so my practice morphed from weight loss, and my own personal journey morphed from weight loss to I'm a food addict. And I was not diagnosed as a food addict until after my weight loss. And that sometimes it's backwards. In fact, here's a funny story. I was so angry with Bitten Johnson. She's the founder of the HMA program. She diagnosed me as a food addict, and I was so angry with her. And I quit the program for 6 months because I was so angry. I'm like, Bitten, I have been sugar-free for 6 years. How dare you tell me I'm a food addict? I have everything under control, and I didn't, because I had switched over to alcohol. I had switched over to sugar-free chocolate, those kinds of things. And when I realized I'm a food addict, that's when my healing it was completed at that point. Now I'm never complete, because I identify as a food addict and I will never be caught off guard. And I am in recovery, waiting for remission. But that was the day that I'm like, oh, she's right. but I quit her program for 6 months. I was probably one of her longest students because I was mad at her, but that was healing. And then that has also transferred into my own clients now because I understand why they're angry with me and I know how to work with them.
How do you make the concept of food addiction palatable to them? That's the initial response is, no, not me.
Yeah, it's patience as their coach. I have to understand that they will project things to me because I am a point blank. If you watch my social media, I get nervous with you watching that sometimes because I'm a tell it as it is kind of girl. And that's what kind of coach I am. I'm not a feel-good intuitive coach. And I understand that about my style of coaching. And I have to understand that these women may be angry with me, but I have to tell them the truth because somebody did that for me. Bitten looked me in the eye and said, Monica, you're an alcoholic. That hurt. But that was the day that my freedom began. And as angry as I was with her, I had to go through the grieving process. And so I understand when I work with clients, 10% of what I do is science. They don't care about the scientific language that I learned in that program. They don't care. I have to sit with them in the pit while they're going through all of these grieving processes and understand eventually they will come back. And typically in my 18-month program, that's what happens. At some point, they get angry, they leave the program, and I know it's just a matter of months till they come back and say, you know what? Abstinence is the only way. That's my foundation of the practice is abstinence.
Tell us a little bit about your practice and your approach. Are you a keto? Are you a carnivore?
That is a really good question. My practice started out, and I have lots of coaches who coach for me. And so my practice is multifaceted. I don't want to forget where I came from with the weight loss because I understand that not everybody knows. 80% of the people on my weight loss program are food addicts. And I have to understand that. And I have to cater and I have to speak their language of I just need to lose weight. Because I know at some point they're going to realize that as they fall off the wagon and as they go away from the program, they're going to understand and identify with the food addiction conversation that I bring. And I bring the food addiction conversation to my weight loss group. So I have a weight loss side of my practice. I separate my addictions from my weight loss. So I have a food addiction center, and that's an 18-month program, but that is completely separate because there are 2 different treatment plans that I give them, and they can't cross over. But I do focus on the weight loss side, and I speak that language. I also have a hormone side. I understand that women have been ignored for so long, and so there's multifacets to it, but I keep the addictions separate because that is the hardest treatment and that is the longest treatment. We're not in remission until we have been sugar-free for 7 years. And so we have to speak a different language over here, but they do cross over. My addictions, folks, hundreds of pounds are lost as a side effect of the healing that comes from abstinence. So I have to wear separate hats in my practice. I have one coach that only specializes in the weight loss. And then I do all of the addiction. And that's my passion. And that's what I love about the practice as it's morphed is I have gotten to take on my passion and I speak to what I've lived. And so that's kind of how
if you say 80% of your weight loss practice is food addiction, you're saying you're making it separate. Why? Why not bring in the other side?
Yeah. That's a really good question. And I think it boils down to them being ready. Every single session I do with my one-on-ones, with my group, I bring in my 12-step overeaters books and I bring the curriculum over there. And when they resonate with something, then they're ready. If I went to them at first and said, I think you're a food addict, they're more resistant. They're like, no, I'm not, because the denial is so strong in a food addict. They think they have it under control until they don't. And so I drip ideas over there. I drip the curriculum over there so they get it, but they're not ready for abstinence. They still think they can have the keto treats. They still think, and they depend on the keto treats and they depend on this when they don't understand the implications that those bring. So I drip, I just hint, and I tell them, I said, 80% of you in this group are food addicts. And when you're ready, I'm over here waiting for you.
Oh, so then they can switch over if they want to at that point.
Yes.
So weight loss program, what would you do that's different than the food addiction side?
Yeah, I know you're familiar with the Red Dog. With the
dog, yes.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I'm explaining it for our listeners.
So we all have Red Dog. The Red Dog, some people say it's the little angel and the little demon on your, but I prefer to call it the Red Dog and the Blue Dog. And the Red Dog is the little guy that knows you more than you know yourself. My red dog knows exactly where I'm tempted. He would not tempt me on things that I don't even care about, but he knows my weaknesses. And that is what speaks in my head and says, hey, just one bite won't hurt you. Just one bite, you're okay. This restrictive dieting is bad for you. It's an eating disorder, all of these things. So they speak in your mind, all of the things. And with the red dog, he is so conniving. He will talk you in and out of anything. And so I do not recommend therapy for my addictions clients first. We eventually will need therapy. I needed therapy. I needed marriage therapy. I needed all of it. But if I did that first, that red dog is so tricky. He would tell that therapist anything.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it?
I've lost clients to therapists who are like, why are you listening to your nutritionist? You can have everything. And so red dog is the reason why. And that's really the only difference. Some people can have different foods. If you are not chemically addicted to foods, perhaps you can have berries. You cannot over in my addiction program, at least for a while, until we test how you react to that. So the order of therapy is the number one difference between the two programs, because my emotional eaters are over in my weight loss program. The ones who eat when they're bored, the ones who have gone through a trauma or something like that. Those guys can handle therapy first. A food addict cannot handle therapy first. And that is the major difference. They both lose weight on both sides. Long-term weight loss is the difference as well. When you go through the addictions, it's long-term because you can't. If I went to, my drug of choice was a donut. We have a specific bakery here in the States. Long Johns, they're called. That's my drug of choice. And if I had one bite of that, I am going to go on a 30-pound sugar binge and you're going to find me somewhere very sick. I understand that about myself. Whereas the people on my weight loss side, they may dabble in that and they may fall off the wagon, but there's no room for that over on my addiction side.
Have you actually found any people in your weight loss crowd that were able to moderate once they lost their weight?
I would say 1 out of 2,000.
Yeah. Right. So maybe even more than 80 that are.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that. Yeah.
I'm struck by the red dog. The phrase that I like to use is, it's like you're playing chess against yourself. It is really a game of wit. And I love your example of, you wouldn't tell the therapist because you've got the red dog that's actually sitting in the chair with the therapist playing chess with herself.
Oh, yeah. He's smart. He is so smart.
Tell us more about your programs. You have the weight loss side, you have the food addiction side, and then you have the hormone side.
Yes. I wish for every girl out there that she would understand her cycle and that she would understand what her hormones mean. I don't know if I would have known what I know about hormones now and what we're putting in our bodies now. I don't know if I would have struggled with obesity like I did. And this is a very risky program that I run. Have you heard of Dr. Mindy Peltz? She's a fascinating woman. And there's some things that I don't agree with. There's some things that in her book that if I gave to one of my clients, they would fall off the wagon. And even the weight loss side, I would never recommend some of the trigger foods that she puts in the hormone feed. And so I've adjusted the program just a little bit, just out of experience of losing clients. But the hormone factor and feeding progesterone and starving estrogen of carbs is so fascinating. And so this is a new program.
Elaborate a little bit on what that means.
Yeah. So our women have 30-day cycles. Men have a 24-hour cycle. They can do anything. All of the women hate the men in my program because they just do the things, lose the weight. Even the addiction program is easier for them, I've found. But the women have a 30-day cycle. And what we have been doing, even on the ketogenic side, we have been fighting against our hormones if we ate towards our hormones, like on the end of our cycle, after about day 15, we want to build progesterone. We want to calm down. And what we're doing, and I forget who coined the term, I think Dr. Weaver, rushing women syndrome. We, especially women who are working in men's world right now, trying to climb the ladder, we have forgotten that when our bodies are craving progesterone and we're starving ourselves of progesterone, and this is impacting our adrenal gland. This is why women can't lose weight, because we are rushing all of the time. And so we are learning that if we feed our hormones the foods that progesterone loves, and that is the higher carb, and I'm not talking about donuts, I'm talking about a potato or some nature's carbs. When we feed our hormones those, our bodies just go along with the process. And then on the front side of the cycle, from day 1 of your cycle to ovulation, estrogen loves low carb. And so during those 10 days, those first 10 days, you can work out like a beast. You can do fasting. You can do all of these things. What we've been doing is we've been fasting. We've been doing all of the things throughout the whole cycle, and our bodies are fighting it. So this program is more going along with those hormones, starving the estrogen of carbs, and then feeding the progesterone. So it's a really cool program. I'm really excited about it, but I am cautious. And this is what I would like to ask Dr. Peltz is how do you marry addiction and this program because of the hormone foods that we're feeding and the fact that addiction is not a good mixture for that. So those are the pieces that I'm putting together right now.
Meaning that that the food addict might not be able to eat those higher carbs during the progesterone cycle. Yeah. What about menopause?
Menopause, we go, so when I have a woman come in perimenopause, she still has a little bit of a cycle. So we go based on her cycle and we start the 30-day, it's a 30-day calendar. We start that and I tell her how much to eat and what we're doing. This is a great day to fast. For our menopause women, we go on the moon cycle. So I start them at day 1. And then after they've gone a couple of months, then I put them on something like a 5-1-1 on a 5-day where you're doing some intermittent fasting. One day you're not doing it. So there's a schedule for menopause women as well, because we don't make estrogen and we don't make the estradiol, which we have. That's why we have the hot flashes and all of those things. So yeah, there's a place for the menopause. In fact, there's a whole separate portion of the program just for menopause.
And so you're actually telling people what foods to eat on particular days in your programs.
Yes. Yeah. And my goal for them is for them to feel their bodies because everybody's different. There's not one woman that's on the same cycle. And so when they do this for a couple of months, they will start to feel, hey, I'm in my power phase. This is ovulation. This is the time that I can literally go to the gym and lift powerful weights. But when it comes down to the week before their cycle, we're going to take our foot off of the accelerator. We're going to slow down a little bit. We are not fasting. We are not working out like a beast in the gym. And that's where I had gone wrong as a keto coach because I'm like, hey, let's power through the entire month. We got this. There's a time when we need to just take our foot off the accelerator and go with that and build the progesterone, build our hormones back up and go with the flow. But I have to be very careful because, again, even on my weight loss side, 80% of them are food addicts. And so I have to know them very well.
In both of those areas, the weight loss and the hormone, a lot of medications are prescribed. So obviously with hormone and estrogen replacement therapy, and then, of course, with the weight loss, I want to talk about that in a minute. But how do you deal with that? Because you're not a physician. How do you know what's going on there?
Yes. When I have a woman come to me for the hormone program, I ask that she have a doctor that is willing to look at the hidden numbers, that's willing to dig under the surface, which is not, I don't know how healthcare is where you are, but it's not good here. And so a lot of doctors just don't listen. They say, that's normal, get through it. According to Dr. Mindy, the whole HRT is like the Wild West and nobody knows nobody knows what's going to happen. And so she just says, work with the doctor, go with it because there's nothing we can do. And we're just going to find out. The biggest thing is finding a doctor who will work with you and speak with you and say, here's where you are. Here are the numbers that the mainstream doctors won't give you. And yeah, it is the Wild West when it comes to hormones and medications, and especially the weight loss shots, which is a whole nother topic entirely.
When you talk about numbers with the estrogen, you mean like the estrogen levels and FSH and LH, that sort of stuff?
Yeah. Okay. I had no idea. I had a hysterectomy. Funny story. One night after my weight loss or during my weight loss, I was laying in bed and I'm like, oh, I didn't know skinny people could feel their organs on the inside. Apparently I had a tumor. And so I went through a season where they thought I had cancer, but it was a tumor. And so you don't feel your organ. But through that, I had a hysterectomy, I had a partial hysterectomy. And so, yeah, it's something that, in answer to your question, doctors just, we need to know where we are in our cycles, right? I needed to know after getting a hysterectomy, do I still have estradiol? If I do, that means I'm not anywhere near close to menopause and I treat my lifestyle differently. But since I don't have a cycle, it's harder for me to know. So those blood tests are so important. And now you can get them, you can order them yourself. You don't even have to wait for a doctor. You can order those tests yourself. And that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, except for the interpretation.
Exactly.
You
gotta find
somebody who knows how to
find your person.
Let's get to the weight loss medications because it's the obvious elephant in every clinician's room now. In fact, I know of physicians who prescribe these medications who the therapy portion of their practice just disappeared because people were just happy with the med, thank you, and they're in and out. So how do you deal with this? What's your opinion about the GLP-1s? Know what your approach is because I've seen you on
say, do you want a sound effect of a soapbox that we can play right now?
Yeah.
My opinion is probably not very popular. And I'll be on full restraint mode, of course, because I've walked through it, because it took me a year to lose 120 pounds. And I don't feel that my journey, it was hard to do that. Yes. And I'm not discounting that at all. But the hard started at year 2, when I had to now watch that scale not go down, but to stay the same. And my struggle started on year 2.
And I would agree with you. That is the hard part. And that's when people start to do the weight regain.
Yes. Yeah. And for every pound that came off of my body during my weight loss, I picture it like an onion. For every layer that came off, there was junk underneath, mental health junk. There was marriage things that we had to work through. There were so many things that we had to work through. And I did bring in a therapist to help me process. And sometimes I just asked her, could you just hold this thought for me? Because it's overwhelming. There was a time in my weight loss where everything in me went silent. The spiritual side went silent. My emotions, I felt no joy, no sadness, no laughter, nothing for 6 months. And so those emotions were frozen for me. Had I not walked through those and healed slowly, if my mind had not gone at the healing pace of my body, when I hit year 2, I would have gained that weight back. I had junk to deal with through the healing process. I don't want my clients losing more than a pound a week. The ones who lose quickly gain it back quickly because they're not willing to go through the healing process. There are clients who refuse therapy because they don't want to go into dark places. If you don't go into dark places where your lifestyle is in danger is year 2 through year 6 of maintaining your weight loss. My fear for these, and I scream it. You see me screaming it from the mountain. If a client goes through that, or if somebody goes through that, I don't want to bring shame at all because I was so desperate to lose my weight. I remember saying, just zap it off. I wanted it off now. And I remember and I empathize with these beautiful souls who want to get the body fat off. And so it's not anything of shame, but my heart bleeds because I know that people can't afford this for the rest of their life. I'm watching the side effects. I'm watching the projectile vomiting, and I know that not everybody experiences those side effects. I'm looking at the stats on the thyroid cancer. I'm looking at all of these things, and I don't see currently where they are, but I see their future, and it breaks my heart because I know how hard it is to keep this weight off. And so part of it, they're not dealing with their emotions. They're not letting their mind heal with their body. And the other thing is they're not learning how to eat. They're not learning the impact of insulin resistance. They're not learning the impact of the inner healing, the inner physical healing that the ketogenic lifestyle brings. And so when they stop that shot, here's this thing. I don't know if I told you this ever, but I also coach for a holistic doctor here in the States, and she prescribes these things. And I asked her 2 summers ago, I said, could you put me on this medication? I had about 20 pounds to lose. And I'm like, I need to feel what people are feeling on this. I need to walk through it because I want to build a program for people post GLP-1. I want to help them so they don't gain the weight
What
back.
an interesting concept. Post GLP-1. It's like bariatric surgery.
I'm telling you, she put me on it, and she put me on a low dose. I couldn't eat over 800 calories. So what is happening is people are eating 800 to 1,000 calories. And I don't know if you have the starvation companies where they eat only certain things. I don't want to say the word out loud, but the starvation diet, 800 to 1,000 calories. That's my other arch nemesis. When they adapt, when their metabolism adapts at 800 to 1,000 calories and they stop that shot, they could go to a steakhouse, order what the most healthy meal, and it be 1,300 calories. They're eating what they think is healthy, but it's more than 800 calories, and they start to gain the weight. So it's just a matter of science. 3,500 calories is a pound. So you do the math, and it doesn't take that much for somebody just to put the weight back on. And so through my experience with the GLP-1, I took it for about 3 months. I lost the 20 pounds. I sure did. But I also then learned how to help these women recover by doing the reverse diet with them. And they don't even have to be keto at that point. It's just a matter of calories and upping their calories a small portion every week until they get up to about the 2,000 calorie mark. And then they don't have to gain the weight back. So that was an experience, but I physically couldn't eat over 800 calories during those 3 months. And yeah, that's my opinion. I bleed for those people who are reaching the end of this and knowing how hard it is to keep it off and knowing the mental healing that also has to happen. So I'm praying we figure out solutions.
So you will work with people who take those medications.
I will. And I find a hard line of speaking out against these medications as I do, and also being empathetic and compassionate to those and saying, hey, if you're taking them, it's okay. It's all right. I'm going to help you out. I'm going to help you. So it's a hard balance, especially on social media, to warn people and then also let the people know, hey, if you're in this, you don't have to gain the weight back, and we're going to help you find the way out.
For example, with this reverse diet and really all the other food addiction technique, we haven't actually talked much about the food addiction program. Can you tell us a little bit about that? One thing I did hear you say is not therapy first. It sounds like it's food first.
Yes. It's the food first. We have to remove the drug. Yeah. And that's another thing.
Do you actually give a food plan?
I do. And I don't give it specific. So a lot of people say, Monica, do you have a meal plan? And I have 20 of them. Anybody who does meal plans could be very wealthy because you make them beautiful, you make them yummy. But the fact of the matter is they don't work, because real life is when your significant other says, let's go out to eat. A food plan is only good until that dinner when you go out to eat. And then what do? So my passion is to teach real life. And so I teach both my addictions and my weight loss, I teach them how to eat. And so my meal plan for my addiction is very stringent. It is probably looks like therapeutic keto a little bit, but I add extra things in between their meals to help build the GLP-1, because a lot of the food addicts and weight loss, their leptin is broken. Their hormones are broken. They don't have the shut off. They don't have the full feeling. And so I want to build that up, and I want to heal the leptin resistance, and I want to make them leptin sensitive. And so I will add things in between meals like coconut oil and L-glutamine. Those are the two things that I say, I don't care how you get it in you, but let's do coconut oil and L-glutamine in between meals. And then I'll have them do, say, 3 ounces of protein. I have them do some veggies. I have them it's the ketogenic plan, but it is completely sweetener. There's nothing sweet to the mouth in this plan at all. By the time they're done doing that for about 90 days, that leptin resistance has turned into leptin sensitivity. And now they're no longer hungry. And so then I'll have them, if we're working with weight loss as well, I'll have them remove the coconut oil. You don't need that much. You can lower that if you need to. And I put them more on a ketogenic lifestyle. But we got to remove everything first. We've got to remove the drug. And we got to go through the withdrawals. The withdrawals last about 90.
So when you say ketogenic lifestyle, are you meaning like carbs of under 30 grams?
Yes. I'm a pretty therapeutic keto coach anyway. So 20 to 30 total carbs is usually what I keep them at.
It sounds like your program, at least this part of it, is keto, but with a high sensitivity to food addiction.
Yes. Yeah, very much. And I just went on the carnivore experiment. It's a total experiment on my part. And I am loving that for my addictions. And so I'm really thinking about doing kind of an option for them, because I think that would heal them a little bit faster even. I think the timeline could be, just with what I've experienced the last it's been 30 days for me. In the last 7 years, I have never felt full, even with the fats, until I did that. So I think that is a tool that I'm going to be experimenting with just a little bit in my practice for those willing, because it's not for everybody. But that impact alone and feeling full for the first time in my life has been incredible. And so I think there's some things that we could open up and unpackage in that, so we're able.
Outside of the food, what else do you do? Because food addiction is addiction. So there's more than just food, meditate as well.
Yes. And that's where my group comes in.
Okay.
I work with the 12 steps. We're working through that. We go through every Monday. I meet with each person privately, one-on-one, and then we have a group. And the group, having a coach is great. I'm able to do my thing with them. I'm able to give them a plan. I'm able to walk them through their personal weeks. But when you bring in the group, that's probably the best part of the program, because they realize that they're not alone, and they realize that, hey, I've had these thoughts and I've been hungry all week, or I've been tempted to go for that drug again. And when they see that they're not alone, that is just the star of the program. And we go through the 12 steps. So right now, and I just go through that 12 steps at a time, just weekly. We read the book 12 Steps for Overeaters, and we talk about it, we discuss it. And it's fascinating that everybody comes out with something different. when we're reading this book together. And then we talk about the struggles, but it's all based around the 12 steps. And that has been so successful, the group aspect of it, and knowing that when they're struggling, they've got an entire army behind them, cheering them on.
What about the other aspects of therapy like CBT or DBT? Do you mention any of that?
After the initial, probably the 6-month mark, I would think, then we start bringing in the therapy, because I do believe wholeheartedly in therapy, because not only with just the food addiction tendencies and that's a whole host of things that therapy is good for. But in my own personal life, I struggled with my marriage. I struggled with my friendships. So there is social aspects to weight loss that are so that you feel like you're alone. And so a food addict is not missing that portion of the healing and the therapy. Had I not had therapy, I don't know what would have happened to my marriage or and we had no troubles. It was like, I'm a different woman. I'm a different person from the inside out. And so not only did I not know myself, my husband's, who in the heck am I living with? She's got confidence. And so a food addict is not exempt from those problems. And so I am really in tune to when I see signs of this, okay, it's time. It is time. But for a food addict, not under the 6-month mark. It is really, I have experienced firsthand what happens when I send them to therapy first. And one client that I had a couple years ago gained 60 pounds because of therapy.
Let's talk now about intermittent fasting. You mentioned that you've got a certification in that. I've often advised against that for early food addiction. So what's your take on
Oh, yeah.
intermittent fasting?
100%. 100%. A lot of food addicts also have eating disorders and disordered eating thoughts, because they come to you thinking, I just need to lose weight. I take that back. I've had one person come to me saying I'm a food addict. Everybody else thinks they want to lose weight. And so it's a process for me to try to get them to see, are you sure this is not a food addiction issue? Intermittent fasting has so many layers. I am certified. Yes. I believe in it. Yes. I do it in Fasting Like a Girl. I do it in my normal practice. However, I think there's a lot of danger, and I would never start a food addict on intermittent fasting because there are so many disordered eating thoughts. I probably think too much about eating disorders. I believe I'm a breath away from an eating disorder if I'm not careful, if I obsess. And I believe we all are. And when you have a client come to you desperate to lose weight, sometimes they just want to starve. When you have a client come to you knowing that they have a food addiction, they think if I just abstain from food, then I'm going to be okay. And they don't want to learn how to eat. So I would not put one of my food addiction clients on intermittent fasting for at least, I would say, about 6 months. And to be honest with you, I haven't yet for my food addiction, because I had a binge eating disorder. When I do fasting, that triggers that about the 24-hour mark. I'm like, okay, I can eat in 24 hours. So I want to binge. And that scares me. So I have to be creative when I do fasting. And I have to break my fast at 23 hours instead of, if I'm doing a 24, I've got to break it at 23 to trick my mind to think. And so I'll eat a piece of string cheese or something at 23 hours so that I don't binge. And because there's something magical about 24, which there's not, it's just in my mind. So I break my fast a little bit more creatively, because I know autophagy, we can't not see that. The autophagy is amazing. The healing properties that happen when you fast, the studies that they're doing now on the longer term fast combined with cancer and all of those things, we can't deny that. I just think we have to be responsible, and we have to be very careful, and we have to know our client. We have to know their background, their history. We got to know, do they have any eating disorders?
There's a lot of good science to validate the usefulness of intermittent fasting, but the numbers of people who do intermittent fasting are not doing it because they have those conditions. They're doing it for weight loss.
Yes.
That's what scares me. Especially, as you say, so many of those people are food addicts. This is what really frightens me about it.
Yeah. Yes. Anything you do for weight loss, you have to be able to do for the rest of your life. So many people are like, Monica, you got to your weight loss goal. Are you going to go back to eating the way you used to eat? No, that's how I got there. And so if you don't like fasting, and there's some people who love it and they feel good, and those people, they're not at risk for an eating disorder. But most people, they want to lose that initial weight and then they stop doing what they're doing. So they've relied on intermittent fasting to lose the weight, and then they don't want to do it anymore. And then the weight comes back. So it's just a vicious cycle again. And to be honest, I'm an angry faster. I do not like to fast. When I did the experiment that I did with the carnivore, I naturally fasted. And I do love that. I love the fact that I am eating based on if I'm hungry or not. And it has turned into natural fasting. And to me, that is a beautiful picture. And it's something I've never been able to do before. So that is also something that I've got my finger on the pulse of to see, is that what we want to, how long do I want to do this? Because I really love the way I'm not hungry until about 3:00. But it's a natural fast. It's not, I'm forcing myself to do it. So just really careful when it comes to intermittent fasting. And I love it. And I love the science, but I don't want to take a client down and sabotage their journey over and bring on the threat or the concern of an eating disorder.
Okay. Men and women. You mentioned that men lose the weight really quickly. What's your experience about the difference between the men that you see and the women that you see?
They are in so much trouble, especially when we do group, because I do a weight loss support group as well as an addiction. Oh, and the women get so angry at them and they take it like a champ. But yeah, their bodies are on 24-hour cycles. And so they just do the things, they lose the weight. Some of them just have to give up Diet Coke and they're losing weight. Their bodies are just created so much different than ours with all of the hormones. And it's a beautiful picture of what a woman goes through in the procreation and all of that. It's a beautiful picture. And the men are so simple. They just do the things and they lose the weight. But I'm loving it now. I feel like there's a transition happening where people are understanding mainstream medical and they're understanding more about their bodies. And so the men that are coming to me now are like, Monica, I want to reverse my type 2 diabetes. And those guys are serious and they do it very quickly. Usually their medication's gone with the help of their doctor within 3 months. And so I think the men are also more in tune to, hey, I want to get my sugar down. I want to fix my body naturally. I can do this through food. I don't need metformin. I don't need all of these things. And so I think there's a beautiful transition that's happening right now with both men and women.
Now let's talk about the family. You mentioned that your transformation affected your marriage and your family life and your friend. So how have you managed to live the sugar-free world in your family life?
Oh, yeah. You're a podcaster, so I don't know. I can't imagine you doing a radical session. I'd like to hear it if you did. But I just did a radical one on my podcast this week, and I was like hiding under a rug because I was so afraid. I didn't want my kids listening to it. I didn't want my mother listening to it or my pastor. But I don't believe in doing anything other than authentic and raw. So I don't want to lie to people. I want to tell them, okay, this is how it impacted my marriage. You have relationships and family and friends. I don't have the same friends now than when I started my journey. And my marriage has changed. Personalities have changed. Physical things have changed. And everything changed. And I realized I started to panic at first. I started to say, oh, I'm broken. Something's wrong. And then I realized, no, this is a journey. Embrace every single part of this journey. Embrace the relationship changes, even if it's rough. People treated me different when I was 250 pounds. And I hate to say that. I am respected now, and I don't know how to change it. It's wrong. It's wrong. But there is such a thing as fat shaming and skinny shaming. I lost friends due to you look different now. My family, the very guy that saved my life, my oldest son, has asked me, hey, Mom, you're not going to do this the rest of your life, are you? So we can have self-sabotagers in our own life based on my whole entire life story. The very one who changed my life is also, hey, here, Mom, here's a glass of wine. People care what's on your plate. They really do. It's the weirdest thing. Is that the way it is in where you live? Do they care?
I think we worry that they care, and then we're told that they don't care. I don't actually know the answer to that question. I'm convinced that to some degree they do because they're feeling that they're being compared to you, or they want to give you something and you say no, and then they feel rejected.
Yeah. One of the things I teach my clients is how to deal with social situations like that and how to deal with family situations.
Exactly.
There's a couple of different ways. Number one, if you are going to be with that person, again, like if it's a Bible study or if it's a family member or somebody close and you're going to be with them, have the hard conversation. We had a new Bible study this year, and I just said, hey, I'm going to be with you for the next 2 years. I just need you to know how I eat. I need you to know, I don't care what you eat. This is what I do. So I had a hard conversation at the front of the sessions with them. But if you're going to only see somebody, say you're going to visit I have a beautiful friend in Washington, and she's elderly, and she wanted to cook for me. I didn't want to hurt her feelings. And so what I did was I took all of the things that she gave me, cut it up on my plate, spread it out. I have not cheated. I don't believe in cheat days. In 7 years, I've not cheated. Okay. Had a glass of wine. I found that out. But I have stayed on the ketogenic plan for 7 years. I'm not going to cheat because it's a 30-pound sugar binge for me. And so I didn't want to hurt her. So I cut it up, spread it around my plate, ate what I could, ate the things I could, not letting perfection get in the way of progress. There's probably things in there, but she had no idea. And I wasn't going to see her again. So I didn't want to have that conversation. I just pretended. So I teach my clients little tricks like that. And you have to do
What about in the home? Like,
yeah,
have a sugar phone.
Yes. And this is a tough one for me. And I probably need your expertise on this because I'm raising a daughter and I want to be so careful with her. She knows what I do for a living and she knows my story, but I don't want to bring any shame to her. I don't want to bring any eating disordered thinking for her. So what I do is I cook for everybody. So I cook what I'm eating. So I make sure there's some meat there. There's the things that I can eat. And then I add a potato or I add something that they would like. And what has happened in our family is they've all just said, well, you don't eat that anyway. So I might as well eat what you're eating. My husband went keto, didn't even know he needed to lose weight. And he lost 40 pounds and he eats like I do now. So It's just been a natural morph. But if it's not, we just add what they can eat. Macaroni and cheese or whatever they need.
That's actually ideal. So you model it, you offer it, and hopefully they will gradually go for that. Tell us about your coaching. Tell us about that.
Yeah. I wake up every morning and I just say a quick prayer and I just say, God, why did you choose me for this? It is such an honor and a privilege. 10% of what I do on both sides, on my weight loss side and the addiction side, 10% of what I do is calories and macros. 90% of what I do is sitting with people through junk in real life. I heard a story one time about a guy who had fallen, and I don't know the source of the story, but a guy who had fallen in a pit and he couldn't get out. And he saw above the pit, there was a librarian that walked by and he said, hey, I need help. I need to get out of this pit. And the librarian threw a book down and said, this will help you. Threw a book down to him. Didn't help him get out. A doctor went by up at the top of the pit and said, here's a pill. Here's a pill. This will help you. He was still in the pit. And a psychologist walked by and said, let's talk about the feelings. Let's talk about your family. And nothing helped him. And this other guy walked by and jumped into the pit with him. And the guy says, now we're both stuck down here. What did you do that for? And the guy told him, he says, I've been here before. I know the way out. And he helped him climb out of the pit. And that's what I do every day. We get in the pit with clients who are hurting. I sit and I listen, which is why I got the life coaching skills, because I so desperately needed to learn, how do you active listen? What do you do? We get people through divorces. We get people through real life. And that's really where the success is, because honestly, you can go find out how to do keto online for free. You can find out how to do addictions for free. But until you have somebody to walk in the pit with you and get you through real life, I call it real life keto. 75% of self-help books are on the shelf. And so that's what I do every day, one-on-one with clients. I sit with them, walk them through. We talk about what they're doing through the week. How do we ketoize it? How do we stay? If you're an addict, what do we do to prevent a relapse? What do we do? So that's what I do.
Okay. So that's
8 hours a day.
That's the real life keto. And what about training other coaches?
Oh, yes. And that's brand new. Kate, I think her name is Kate Jaramillo. She's the one that changed my life. She walked with me on how to become a coach. She certified me, wonderful woman. And she called me 2 years ago. She said, Monica, I've watched you build your practice from the bottom up. I want you to take over my company.
Wow.
So this year I took over her company, Ketogenic Living 101, and I now certify coaches, because here's the thing. Nobody can tell your story but you. And so every voice is needed. A lot of people say, Monica, you're creating competition. No, I'm creating help, because there are so many of us who have a message to spread, but we don't have enough power to do it. And so the more health coaches we can create to walk people through healing, the better. I was cheering the other day, one of my friends just enrolled a Bitten's program. I'm like, yes, we're going to have help, because there's not enough of us. So I now certify ketogenic coaches and get them started. I give them a business in a box so they don't have to start from scratch. And that's what Kate did for me. So I want to do it for everybody else. And so exciting. New turn for me.
And you're making sure they get the food addiction message out there as well.
Yes. I have that in the whole carnivore. I have a section of it. And my goal is to get everybody over to Bitten's program.
Oh, good.
You can't do one without the other. Honestly,
yes.
I tried for good 4 years. And I'm like, why are these people failing?
Yeah.
You've got to have the addiction.
Keto or carnivore is the way to lose the weight and to maintain and keep it off food addiction. Most likely.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us about your podcast.
It's a really scary thing, because I don't know what I'm doing. It's brand new. Coach Darcy and I, we release a new podcast every Tuesday morning. We talk about the science behind keto. but a lot of what we talk about is real life. How did this impact your marriage? How did this impact your health? How do you keep the weight off? I will talk about anything that anybody wants to talk about. The skin removal surgery that I had to go through, all of it, it is just bare bones. We're going to talk about reality. There's weight loss, scientific, and then there's reality, the messy part. So we talk about the messy part. But yeah, it's been fun. It's been a fun journey for us.
Okay, good. People will be able to find out more about your program and the podcast in the show notes. Before we close off, anything else that you want to tell us about your message or your program?
I want people to know it's possible, that healing is messy, but healing is possible, and long-term healing is possible. There are times that I thought I was not going to make it. There were times that I just thought everybody else can do this but me. And the motto, just for today, changed my life. And that's how I got through the year of the healing and the 7 years of maintenance. Is I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but just for today, I'm going to be okay and I'm going to choose the right things. And so I just want people to understand that just because they mess up, just because they struggle in their weight loss, it is messy, but it is possible. And I'm living proof that it is possible and to keep it off.
We have a signature question. If you could tell a younger version of Monica about food addiction, what would it be?
I wrestled with that for 2 days because I have so many messages to her. But my message to my younger self is please do it sooner than later. I don't ever want to say I have regret, but I do. I have a regret of raising all 4 of my children as a very sick woman. And if I could have changed sooner, if I would have known about the hope sooner, I could have run around the playground with my kids. I could have been the mom. And I don't want to say the coulda, shoulda beens. I don't want to stay there, but it is a reality for me. I should have. Now I have the mindset of I am doing it. But if I could talk to my younger self, I would tell her it's possible and do it now while your kids are still young.
Thank you so much, Monica, for spending this time with us talking about your program and your thoughts.
Thank you for changing my life, Vera, as well. I appreciate you so very much.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for joining us this week on Food Junkies Recovery from Food Addiction. Make sure to join our Facebook group, Sugar Free for Life Support Group, I'm Sweet Enough. Molly and Clarissa are food addiction professionals who offer one-to-one counseling and group coaching through Sweet Sobriety. Please subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in today's episode, we'd appreciate you leaving us a review on your favorite platform. Your feedback helps grow our show and allows us to reach others who need to hear this message of recovery. Don't forget to pick up a copy of Dr. Tarman's book, Food Junkies. And as Vera always says, the power is ours.